Hey, good morning, guys. What's up? Coming at you live from the Body Shop today. Listen, our passage for today comes from John chapter 10, verses 11 through 18. We're going to continue today, this week, and all month as we look at the different I am statements of Jesus. And today we're going to continue looking this week at the statement, I am the gate and I am the good shepherd. This passage here is probably a familiar passage to many folks. A lot of times we picture Jesus, walking, carrying the little sheep, the little lamb, or whatever, and it's an easy image for us to think about. But there's really so much more to this passage than just that. And in verses 11 through 18, Jesus paints this picture, uses the imagery of a good shepherd. Now, for us, we don't have it doesn't come quite as natural for us to think about being a shepherd, and yet this was something that for the people in first century Palestine was very, very common for them. And in fact, he even, in using something as common as being a shepherd, he even ties it back in to the Old Testament in Ezekiel chapter 34, where the kings of Israel are described as bad shepherds, and yet he comes in as the good shepherd of Israel and even of the whole world. And so as we look at this passage, this imagery of him as the good shepherd, it's contrasted with this image of a hired hand, someone who maybe would make minimum wage, just a small daily wage to look after the sheep as an assistant. You might think of someone working at Whataburger for $7.75 an hour or something like that. And yet when something difficult happens, when things get froggy, right? And an enemy, a predator, comes in to try to take out the sheep, Jesus said that the hired hand, that brother just said, "Whoop, I'm out. I don't get paid enough for this. Dude, this is somebody else's sheep. It's not. I ain't trying to fight no bear to protect this little sheep. I'm out." And yet Jesus says that that's what the hired hand would do. And yet he's not like that. He's not a hired hand. He's the good shepherd. He's one that when the enemy would come, when a predator would come, he would lay down his life. Do you catch that? He would be willing to lay down his life for his sheep, to protect them against something that they can't protect themselves from. And there's so much meaning in that. It is so much more than just an example of sheep. But it's actually a picture of what Jesus did for us on the cross. You see that we as the sheep, we had this enemy, this predator that was coming after us that we were helpless to do something against, that we could not do anything against the predator, the enemy of sin and death. And yet Jesus, not as a victim, but as a willing sacrifice, as a good shepherd, laid down his life to pay a price that you and I could never pay, to protect us from an enemy called sin and death that we could never defend ourselves from. And that because of that, we can have a real promise that we'll spend eternity in a real place called heaven, that we have a power here in life today greater than any that we've ever known, a power that is within us, the power that spoke creation into being, lives and dwells within us through the Holy Spirit, that we have a purpose greater than any we could ever imagine, that we have a place in God's story. This weekend I was in a church in North Carolina. It was Crossfire Biker Church. And this was the coolest church I've ever been to. It's a church for bikers. And the thing of all the stuff, and I'm sure I'll talk about it over the coming weeks, some of the things that I love most about this church was that there wasn't a single person in that church who took for granted what Jesus did for them. There wasn't a person in that church who took for granted the fact that Jesus was a good shepherd who laid down his life for them. Because they knew what it was like. They remembered what it was like to be down, to be addicted, to be at the rock bottom. And then they've seen how Jesus has changed their life, as God has moved and changed their life. As a willing sacrifice, as a good shepherd, he changed their life. And they don't take it for granted. Friends, I want to challenge you today. Don't be someone who's entitled to Jesus being their shepherd. Don't be someone who has paid enough dues, who has been good enough, who is smart enough, cool enough, can make a bump it without a bump it. Don't be somebody who thinks that God owes them something. Be like my friends at the Crossfire Church, who recognize that Jesus is the good shepherd, who willingly, as a voluntary act of his own, laid down his life for his sheep, who laid down his life for you, who paid a price you could never pay. So I want to challenge you today. Don't take for granted Jesus' goodness as our shepherd, but instead recognize that, man, it is by no deservingness of our own that he's done that, but simply because he loves you. Man, I hope this encouraged you today. Our memory verse this week is John chapter 10, verse 9. Memorize it, own it, take this video, share it with some friends. Go love somebody today. And remember, man, Jesus is your good shepherd who willingly laid down his life for you. And let that change you. I love you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.